The coffee cup fell from Admiral Sarah Chun's hand, shattering against the polished floor of the North American Defense Command Center. Steam rose from the spreading puddle as klaxons wailed across the facility, their urgent cry drowning out the normal hum of computers and quiet conversations. "Admiral!" Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice cracked as he spun around from his monitoring station. "We've got massive energy signatures appearing at the edge of our solar system. Multiple contacts, hundreds of them." Chun's combat boots crunched over the broken ceramic as she strode to the main tactical display. The enormous holographic screen flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional map of the solar system. At its outer edge, beyond Neptune's orbit, red dots were materializing like angry stars being born. How many? Chun's voice remained steady despite the ice forming in her veins. 2,000 3,000. Rodriguez's fingers danced across his console. "Admiral, the count keeps climbing. These aren't meteorites or space debris. These are ships, massive ships." Dr. Elena Vasquez burst through the command center doors, her usually perfect hair disheveled from running. As Earth's leading xenobiologist and first contact protocol specialist, she'd been pulled from her morning lecture at MIT the moment the alerts began. "Sarah, tell me this is some kind of drill," Elena said, breathing hard. Chun pointed at the display. "I wish it were. Elena, meet our visitors." The hologram zoomed in, revealing sleek vessels that defied human understanding of physics. Each ship stretched over a mile long, their surfaces rippling with patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. They moved in perfect formation, cutting through space without visible propulsion systems. "My God," Elena whispered. "They're beautiful." "They're also armed," added Chief Petty Officer Marcus Thompson, the gruff weapons specialist who'd seen combat in 3 different conflicts. His scarred hands moved across his console with practiced efficiency. "I'm reading energy buildups across their entire fleet. Whatever those things are packing, it makes our nuclear arsenal look like firecrackers." The main screen suddenly filled with static, then cleared to show a face that would haunt humanity's dreams for generations to come. The being appeared vaguely humanoid but stretched and refined, as if evolution had taken a different path. Its skin held a pearl-like quality that shifted between silver and deep blue. Most unsettling were its eyes, completely black, like looking into the void between stars. When it spoke, the words seemed to bypass the ears entirely, resonating directly in the minds of everyone present. "People of the third planet, you call yourselves human. We are the HFY. Your species has reached beyond your world, touched the void between stars. This cannot be permitted." The transmission cut to static, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Did everyone else hear that in their head?" Rodriguez asked quietly. "The whole planet heard it," Chen replied, watching as communication feeds from around the globe confirmed the same message had been received everywhere simultaneously. "Elena, what's your assessment?" Dr. Vasquez was already pulling up files on her tablet, her mind racing through decades of theoretical research. "Based on their technology and that telepathic communication, we're dealing with a civilization far more advanced than ours. The fact that they see our space exploration as a threat suggests they might view us as we'd view an aggressive insect species." "Meaning?" "Meaning they're here to exterminate us before we can spread further." The holographic display suddenly erupted with new activity. The alien fleet was moving, accelerating toward the inner solar system at speeds that should have been impossible. "How fast are they traveling?" Chun demanded. Thompson's face went pale as he read his instruments. "Admiral, at their current rate of acceleration, they'll reach Earth in 72 hours. The command center fell silent except for the humming of computers and the distant wail of sirens echoing from outside. Through the reinforced windows, Chun could see people in the streets looking up at a sky that seemed suddenly smaller and far more dangerous. "Get me the president," Chun ordered, "and patch me through to Moscow, Beijing, and London. If we're going to face extinction, we're going to face it united." As her staff scrambled to establish communications, Chen stared at the approaching red dots on the display. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was coming for them at impossible speed. But something nagged at the back of her mind. Why announce their arrival? Why give humanity time to prepare? In her experience, predators didn't usually warn their prey. What were the Kethva really planning? 71 hours and 37 minutes later, Admiral Chun stood on the observation deck of the International Space Station Sentinel, humanity's most advanced orbital defense platform. Through the reinforced transparent aluminum, she could see Earth below a blue marble that had never looked more fragile. "They've stopped," Dr. Vasquez reported from the station's command module. Her voice carried a mixture of relief and confusion. The entire fleet just stopped moving. Chun pushed off from the viewing port and floated back to the central command area, where holographic displays showed the Kethva fleet arranged in a perfect sphere around Earth just beyond the orbit of the Moon. Each ship held position with mathematical precision, their alien hulls gleaming in the harsh light of space. "How long have they been holding position?" Chun asked. 18 hours, 23 minutes, Chief Thompson replied. Even in zero gravity, his military bearing remained rigid. No movement, no communication, no energy buildups. "It's like they're just waiting." Lieutenant Rodriguez, who had been transferred to the station for his expertise with the alien signals, looked up from his console with worry etched across his young face. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from observatories worldwide. The ships aren't just sitting there, they're scanning everything." "Scanning for what?" "Unknown. But the energy signatures are consistent with deep penetration surveys. They're mapping our planet down to the molecular level." Dr. Vasquez floated over to join the conversation, her tablet displaying complex waveform patterns. "I've been analyzing their scanning frequencies. This isn't random exploration, they're looking for something specific." Before Chun could respond, the air around them shimmered with the same pearl blue energy they'd witnessed during the first transmission. The Kethva representative appeared again, but this time the image was three-dimensional, standing among them as if physically present. "Admiral Sarah Chun," the being said, its mental voice somehow conveying both ancient wisdom and immediate threat. "You are the military leader of this world's defenders." "I am," Chun replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. "What do you want?" "From us? Not from you. From your world. Your species has created something that should not exist. Something that threatens the natural order of this galaxy." Elena pushed forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. "What are you talking about? What have we created?" The alien's obsidian eyes seemed to focus on her with uncomfortable intensity. "You study life, Dr. Vasquez. Tell me, what makes your species unique among the intelligent races of this region?" Elena's mind raced. Our diversity, our adaptability, our tendency toward both cooperation and conflict? No. The being's image began to pace, an eerily human gesture from something decidedly inhuman. "Your children." Silence fell over the command module. Of all the answers they might have expected, this wasn't one of them. "Our children?" Chun asked. "Every intelligent species we have encountered develops predictably. Their young mature along established patterns, inheriting the capabilities and limitations of their parents. But human children—" The alien paused, its expression unreadable. "Human children exceed their parents, not just in knowledge, but in fundamental capacity. Each generation becomes more than the last. Thompson's scarred hands clenched into fists. So you're going to kill us because our kids are smart? You do not understand. In 3 of your generations, human children began displaying capabilities that should not exist. Telepathic resonance, probability manipulation, matter reorganization at the quantum level. These abilities appear randomly, unpredictably, growing stronger with each generation. Rodriguez's tablet chimed softly. Admiral, I'm getting reports from major population centers. Children between the ages of 8 and 16 they're responding to the alien presence. Some are speaking in languages they've never learned. Others are drawing complex mathematical equations they couldn't possibly understand. Helena's face went pale. The Kethva aren't here to invade us. They're here because they're afraid of what we're becoming. The alien nodded slowly. Your species stands at a threshold. Within 10 of your generations, human children will possess capabilities that could reshape reality itself. We have seen this pattern once before, eons ago. The species that develop such abilities. What happened to them? Chun asked, though she dreaded the answer. They became something beyond physical existence. Something that could not be reasoned with, negotiated with, or stopped. They consumed 3 star systems before we managed to. The being paused, before we were forced to act. And now you want to do the same to us, Thompson said grimly. We came prepared to do so. But upon arrival, we discovered something unexpected. The holographic display around them shifted, showing readings from across Earth's surface. Red markers appeared over major population centers, but instead of indicating threats, they showed something else entirely. The children are not developing in isolation, the alien continued. They are connecting, forming a network of consciousness that spans your entire world. This has never happened before. Chun stared at the display, watching his lines of connection. Formed between the red markers, creating a web of light that covered the entire planet. What does that mean? We do not know. And that uncertainty terrifies us more than your children's individual capabilities. Through the observation port, the Kethvi fleet remained motionless, 1,000 ship sentinels holding their positions around humanity's home. But Chun realized they weren't positioned for attack, they were positioned for observation. You're not here to destroy us, she said slowly. You're here to study us. The alien's image flickered, and for a moment, Chun thought she detected something that might have been relief in its alien features. We are here to decide your fate, Admiral Chun. But first, we must understand what your species is becoming. Because if we choose wrongly, the being's form began to fade, but its final words resonated clearly in their minds. The consequences will reshape this entire region of space. As the transmission ended, Chun found herself staring out at Earth, wondering what was happening to the children down there and what it meant for humanity's future. In a suburban elementary school in Denver, 8-year-old Maya Patel put down her crayon and stared at her drawing. What had started as a picture of her family had become something else, entirely a complex diagram showing the orbital positions of the Kethva fleet, complete with energy flow patterns and mathematical notations that would have challenged a graduate student in astrophysics. Maya? Her teacher, Mrs. Henderson, knelt beside her desk. What is this, sweetheart? Maya looked up with eyes that seemed older than her years. It's the Watchers, Mrs. Henderson. They're scared because we're becoming something new. But it's... Okay, we won't hurt them. Similar scenes were playing out across the globe. In Tokyo, a 12-year-old boy was speaking fluent Mandarin despite never having heard the language before. In São Paulo, a 10-year-old girl was solving quantum mechanical equations on her bedroom wall. In London, a group of teenagers was building a device from spare electronics that was emitting the same energy signatures as the alien ship's dot on the Sentinel station. Dr. Vasquez was frantically documenting the reports flooding in from every major population center. Sarah, the scale of this is unprecedented. We're not talking about a few gifted children. This is happening to millions of young people simultaneously. Admiral Chun floated beside the main display, watching as the network of connections between Earth's children grew stronger and more complex. Elena, what's your professional opinion? Are we looking at the next step in human evolution? I think we're looking at something that transcends evolution as we understand it. These children aren't just developing new abilities, they're developing them in perfect coordination with each other. It's as if ... As if what? As if they're becoming parts of a larger organism. Chief Thompson's voice cut through their conversation from across the command module. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's coming from multiple sources simultaneously. The HFY? No, ma'am. It's coming from the children. The main display shimmered and resolved into an image that took Chun's breath away. It showed a young girl, perhaps 11 years old, with dark hair and intelligent eyes. But behind her, barely visible like double-exposed film, were the faces of thousands of other children from around the world. When the girl spoke, her words carried the weight of a multitude. Admiral Chun, Dr. Vasquez, we need to talk. Elena gripped the nearest handhold, her knuckles white. How do you know who we are? We know many things now. We know why the HFY came. We know what they're afraid of, and we know what we're becoming. The image shifted, and suddenly they were looking at a representation of the human brain, but this brain was connected to thousands of others, forming a vast network of thought and consciousness. The HFY call us the threshold species, the collective voice continued. They've encountered 7 others like us throughout their history. 6 were destroyed. 1... The display changed again, showing a region of space where stars burned, with impossible colors and physics seemed to bend and flow like water. One transcended physical reality entirely. The HFY fear will follow the same path. Chun found her voice. Will you? A smile appeared on the girl's face, but it carried the wisdom of ages. That choice has not been made yet, Admiral. But we want to make it together, with you, with all of humanity, not just those of us who carry the new capabilities. What do you mean? Thompson asked suspiciously. The abilities aren't limited to children, Chief Thompson. They're limited to minds that haven't yet learned that certain things are impossible, but that limitation can be overcome. The display showed brain scans from around the world, children and adults alike beginning to show the same neural patterns that indicated the new capabilities. We're not becoming separate from humanity, the collective voice explained. We're becoming humanity's next stage. All of us together. Suddenly, the alien presence filled the command module again. The HFY representative materialized alongside. The children's projection, its pearl blue form radiating tension. This was not anticipated, it said. Previous threshold species developed as isolated individuals. Your species is attempting to undergo the transition as a unified whole. The girl avatar turned to face the alien. Is that why you're afraid? Because we won't leave anyone behind? The implications are... The alien paused, and Chun realized it was struggling with concepts it had never encountered. If your entire species transcends together, retaining connection to physical reality while gaining access to higher dimensions... We could become something that bridges both states of existence, Elena breathed, understanding dawning in her eyes. Not just transcendent beings, but beings who could help others through the same transition safely. The HFY representative's form flickered. Such a species could fundamentally alter the nature of consciousness itself throughout this galaxy. The risk, the opportunity, the the children's voice interrupted gently. You've been alone in your advanced state for so long, you've forgotten. That growth doesn't have to mean abandonment. We could help other species through their own thresholds. No more need for difficult choices. No more civilizations destroyed out of fear. For a long moment, the command module was silent except for the hum of life support systems. Chun watched as two forms of consciousness, one ancient and cautious, one newly born and optimistic, faced each other across an impossible gulf of understanding. Finally, the alien spoke. "Show us." The girl avatar nodded. "Maya, would you like to demonstrate?" The display shifted to show the elementary school in Denver. Maya Patel was still at her desk, but now her drawing was three-dimensional, floating in the air above her paper like a hologram. Other children in the classroom were reaching out to touch it, their faces filled with wonder rather than fear. "This is how we learn now," the collective voice explained. "By sharing not just information, but understanding itself. Watch." Maya's teacher, Mrs. Henderson, reached out tentatively to touch the floating diagram. The moment her fingers made contact, her eyes widened with sudden comprehension. "I can see it," she whispered. "The mathematics, the energy patterns, I understand how their ships work. The transition doesn't require abandoning your physical forms or your individual consciousness," the children explained. "It requires expanding them, growing beyond the limitations you thought were permanent." The HFY representative stood motionless for several seconds. Then slowly, its form began to change. The pearl blue surface became more translucent, revealing complex patterns of light flowing beneath like circuits made of pure thought. "We have not permitted ourselves this level of openness in millennia," it admitted. "But if what you propose is possible, then the galaxy changes," Chun said quietly. "No more extinct civilizations. No more species destroyed for the crime of growing. No more watchers holding themselves apart out of fear," the children added. Gently, the alien's obsidian eyes seemed to focus on something beyond the physical space of the command module. "The fleet awaits our decision. Do we withdraw and allow your species to complete its transition? Do we intervene to prevent a potentially catastrophic outcome, or double quotes, or do you join us?" The girl avatar asked. "Help us prove that transcendence doesn't have to mean isolation." Elena gripped Chun's arm. "Sarah, are you understanding what's happening here? This isn't first contact anymore. This is the birth of something entirely new." Chun nodded, watching as the holographic displays around them began to show feeds from across the globe. Everywhere, children were reaching out to adults, sharing their expanding consciousness, demonstrating that the threshold between one state of existence and another could be crossed together. "The question is," she said quietly, "are we ready for what comes next?" The answer would reshape not just humanity's future, but the destiny of every intelligent species in the galaxy. 6 months after the HFY fleet's arrival, Admiral Chun stood in what had once been the United Nations General Assembly Hall. The familiar rows of seats and national flags remained, but the space now hummed with an energy that transformed. Everything it touched representatives from every nation on Earth sat alongside beings that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. Some were clearly human, but their eyes held depths that seemed to contain galaxies. Others were HFY, their pearl blue forms now warm and welcoming rather than cold and alien. And scattered throughout the assembly were individuals who seemed to shift between both states, humans who had undergone partial transcendence while maintaining their physical forms. "The initial reports are encouraging," Dr. Vasquez announced from the podium, her appearance subtly changed by the consciousness expanding process she'd volunteered for 3 months earlier. "The first generation of integrated communities on Mars are thriving. The colonists are using both traditional technology and expanded consciousness abilities to terraform at rates we never thought possible. Maya Patel, now serving as one of humanity's youngest ambassadors to the Transcendent Network, raised her hand. At 8 years old, she spoke with the authority of someone who had access to the combined knowledge of millions. Dr. Vasquez, what? About the other star systems? The ones where the Kethva had to make difficult choices in the past? The Kethva elder, known as Synthara, rose from its designated area. Its form had become even more translucent over the months, showing the beautiful patterns of thought that flowed beneath its surface. 3 systems have been contacted, Synthara announced, its mental voice now warm rather than cold. The species. We once ... terminated ... left remnants. Not survivors in the traditional sense, but echoes of consciousness preserved in quantum substrate. With human assistance, we have begun the process of restoration. A murmur of amazement filled the assembly. Chief Thompson, whose scarred hands now occasionally sparked with energy that could reshape matter at the molecular level, leaned forward. In his seat, "You mean we can bring back extinct civilizations?" "Not bring back," Maya corrected gently. "Help them continue. Death isn't always final when consciousness can exist beyond physical form." The Kethva preserved these echoes without realizing it, trapped in their guilt over what they'd done. Elena stood from her position in the scientific advisory section. What Maya is describing aligns with our research into consciousness persistence. When a species undergoes the threshold transition, some aspects of their collective awareness can survive even total physical destruction. The implications hung in the air like morning mist. Chun found herself thinking about all the civilizations throughout history that had faced extinction, not just from alien intervention, but from natural disasters, wars, disease. How many could potentially be restored? There are ethical considerations, announced Dr. Johansson, the philosophy professor from Stockholm who had become humanity's leading expert on transcendence ethics. We must obtain consent from these consciousness echoes before attempting restoration. They may have found peace in their current state. Agreed, Synthara said. The first contact with the Veltha remnants has been established. They are eager to continue their growth, but wish to do so alongside other species rather than in isolation. Lieutenant Rodriguez, whose own abilities had developed to allow him to interface directly with any electronic system through thought alone, activated the chamber's main display. It showed a 3-dimensional map of local star systems with Earth at the center and expanding rings of light indicating the reach of the new consciousness network. "The growth rate is accelerating," he reported. "We now have contact with 47 star systems, and the network is expanding exponentially. But we're maintaining the principles established in the first months: no forced transcendence, no interference with species that choose to remain in traditional physical existence." An elderly woman in the back of the assembly stood up. Chun recognized her as Dr. Sarah Okafor, the Nigerian physicist who had initially been skeptical of the entire transcendence process. "I have a question for the youngsters," Dr. Okafor said, her voice carrying both warmth and concern. "What happens to wonder? To discovery? If we can share all knowledge instantly, what happens to the joy of learning something new?" Maya's face lit up with a smile that belonged entirely to her 8-year-old self. "Oh, Dr. Okafor, it's not like that at all. Watch." The girl closed her eyes and extended her consciousness into the network. Suddenly, the entire assembly was connected to her experience as she reached out to touch the mind of a Kethva scientist working in a distant star system. Through Maya's connection, they experienced the alien scientist's excitement as it discovered a form of crystalline life that existed in the spaces between dimensions. The wonder, The joy of first contact with something entirely new flowed through the network like electricity. Each individual consciousness brings its own perspective. Maya explained as she opened her eyes. When we share experiences, we don't diminish wonder, we multiply it. Every discovery becomes a celebration for everyone who chooses to participate. Dr. Okafor sat down slowly, tears in her eyes. I can feel it, she whispered. The universe is so much larger than I ever imagined. Senthara approached the podium, its form now almost purely energy held in roughly humanoid shape. There is something else the assembly must know. Our long-range sensors have detected something unprecedented. The main display shifted to show the edge of the galaxy, where stars grew sparse and the dark matter between systems became dominant. Another galaxy is approaching ours. Not on a collision course, but close enough for contact within several thousand Earth years. Initial scans suggest it contains numerous intelligent species, some of which appear to be undergoing their own threshold transitions. The implications hit the assembly like a physical force. They were no longer talking about transforming one galaxy, they were looking at the potential for consciousness to evolve on an intergalactic scale. Chun stood up, her own enhanced awareness allowing her to sense the emotional resonance of everyone. In the chamber, fear mixed with excitement, uncertainty balanced against hope. Ladies, gentlemen, beings of all forms, she began. 6 months ago, we faced what we thought was an invasion. Instead, we discovered we were on the verge of the greatest transformation in the history of conscious life. She gestured toward the display showing the approaching galaxy. Today, we learn that transformation is just the beginning. The question before us now is not whether we can handle the responsibility of transcendence, but whether we're ready to help shepherd it on a scale we never dreamed possible. Maya stood up beside her, the child's small form somehow radiating authority. We won't be doing it alone, she said simply. Every species that joins the network brings its own wisdom, its own perspective. Together, we're becoming something that's greater than the sum of our parts, not losing our individuality, but finding new ways to connect it to something infinite. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Humanity would continue its role as bridge builders between traditional existence and transcendent consciousness. They would help restore the lost civilizations, guide other species through their own threshold moments, and prepare for contact with an entire galaxy of possibly transcendent beings. As the assembly adjourned, Chun found herself standing at the great windows overlooking New York Harbor. The city below had changed dramatically, buildings that shifted and flowed with their inhabitants' needs, transportation systems that operated through consciousness rather than mechanics, gardens that grew in patterns too beautiful and complex for traditional minds to conceive. Elena joined her at the window. Any regrets? She asked. Chun smiled, watching as a group of children, human and Kethiva alike, played in the harbor, their laughter creating visible patterns of light in the air around them. How can I regret becoming more than I ever imagined possible? She replied. Besides, I have a feeling our greatest adventures are still ahead of us. Above them, the Kethiva fleet had long since abandoned their defensive positions. Now the ships served as research vessels and diplomatic platforms, their crews working alongside humans to explore the implications of their shared transcendence, and in the space between Earth and the approaching galaxy, new forms of consciousness were already beginning to stir, hybrids of thought and energy that would serve as scouts and ambassadors for the inevitable moment when two transcendent civilizations would meet among the stars. The age of isolation was ending. The age of infinite connection had begun. Epilogue. The echo of forever, 100 years later. In a space that existed between dimensions, where thought took physical form and time flowed like a river with many tributaries, Maya Patel, though she was no longer entirely Maya, no longer entirely Patel, no longer entirely individual, contemplated the garden of consciousness that had grown from a single moment of choice. Around her, beings that had once been human, Kethva, Velthur, and dozens of other species tended to structures of pure possibility. They grew new forms of life, nurtured young civilizations through their threshold moments, and maintained the vast network that now connected 3 galaxies and was reaching toward a 4th. The entity that had once been Admiral Chun approached. Her consciousness, a brilliant constellation of military precision, transformed into protective compassion. The reports from the edge worlds are fascinating. She communicated through harmonics of meaning that transcended language. We've found 17 more eco-civilizations that can be restored. And they all want to join the network? Asked the being who had once been Senthara, though its ancient caution had transformed into something like cosmic curiosity. They want to choose, Maya replied, her 8-year-old wonder now expanded into something that could comprehend infinite complexity while still delighting in the simple joy of discovery. That's what makes this work. Every being, every species, every form of consciousness gets to decide for itself how much to connect and how much to remain individual. Through the dimensional gardens, they could sense the approaching presence of something unprecedented, a civilization from the far edge of the known universe that had undergone transcendence not through technology or evolution, but through art. Their consciousness expressed itself in forms so beautiful that reality itself was reshaped by their creativity. First contact protocols? Chun asked, though the question was more playful than procedural. Send the children, Maya suggested, her ancient wisdom wrapped in eternal innocence. They always know how to make friends. And so a group of beings, who appeared as children, some who had once been human, others who had originated as geometric patterns of living mathematics from the Crab Nebula, still others who existed as symphonies of gravitational waves given consciousness, went forth to greet the artist's transcendence with the simple question that had started it all. Would you like to play? The universe held its breath, waiting for the answer, but Maya already knew what it would be. In all her centuries of existence, in all the forms of consciousness they had encountered, there was one constant that transcended species, dimension, and even the nature of reality itself. Every thinking being, no matter how vast or strange, remembered what it felt like to wonder, and wonder, it turned out, was the one force in the universe that grew stronger the more it was shared. The end.